let's talk about color toning. So these images have been retouched, everything's done. There's a couple of steps left that I need to do, but I just wanted to walk you through color toning and what it is and how it can massively impact your image and make it from normal or ordinary to extraordinary, okay? So I'll show you the manual way. I also have actions that do this for you. So what I typically do is I use Selective Color for this. And it's just really robust and powerful, and it lets you do a lot of things within your image at one time. So I usually start with my blacks, and my darks are typically opposite of my highlights, and that's just the way you can get some really beautiful looking images. So for this one, I'm probably going to look at there's a lot of this green in the image. So I'm probably going to look at adding a bit of red. Okay, so if I take this slider, if you go to the right, it's cyan. If you go to the left, it's red. But you want to do these in very incremental, subtle amounts. So -5 gives it a nice little glow. And you can decide to up your blacks here, which will give it more of a matte look if you're looking for that. Or you can pull it down and it gives you a bit more contrast. But for this one, I'm just going to leave it at 0. So the next one are your neutrals. Now neutrals, for me, typically I will go a 2 for yellow and a 2 for red. And the reason for that is because the neutrals for me are going to be skin. You know, you're going to have other neutral stuff. Like you can see if you compare the two, this is my backdrop that I made and it's available through Intuition Backdrops. I don't really want to change the backdrop in my neutrals that much. It does tend to be a little tricky because you're going to have to mask it off and it'll affect everything else. So if you come across that problem with this technique, what you can do is you can just go back to 0 and 0 and do that in a separate layer so that it doesn't affect everything that drastically. Let's go to our whites. So for this one, it's supposed to be opposite, right? So red, if you look over here, if we put red here, the opposite of red is like a greenish whatever, right? So my shadows were red. So this is telling me that if I want it to be cohesive, that my highlights should be somewhere in the cooler version. So we're going to choose a little bit of cyan and just a wee bit of blue. Okay, and here you can decide to pop up your whites or bring them down, right? So I'm going to probably do about a -5 on the whites. Now, conversely, you can come in and you can tweak your greens. So if you want to bring it down as far as the darkness or the lightness, you can do this, which is really helpful. And let's say we're going to go into our reds and add a little bit more red. Do you see the flowers in that? It's really going to affect those if you wanted to do that. But for this, I'm just going to leave it at 0. Okay, so now I usually go before and after and I take a look at the changes that I've done. But for this, because I didn't manage to get the neutrals right, I'm going to come back and do another one, and I'm going to go to my neutrals, and I'm going to do my 2 and my 2. Okay, so now I have, this one should be -2. So now I have my neutrals, and what I can do is I can come here and invert that mask, Command I, and choose a white brush, and now I can just paint that effect directly onto her and her skin so that it doesn't affect the entire image, because I really didn't want it to. I didn't want all the other neutral elements in the image to get too yellow because I want to maintain the look of what I was going for. Okay, so you can see how that just added more warmth to her, and as always, I'll just come to my mask and feather that one out. Okay. So the beauty of doing it this way, when you have both of your images, and this is how I work on multiple images, I usually work on 2 images at a time, is now I can grab this selective color, hold my shift key down, let go, and it will apply that to this one centered, right? Now this one over here, because I've already done the mask, I can do the same thing. I can drag it over there, but what I'm going to do is just delete that mask and then add another mask. Invert it, and then go ahead and paint that effect onto her skin as well. Now you could stop there if you wanted to, but the beauty of color toning is you can get so many different looks, and you can tweak it and play with it until you get something that you like. So I'm just going to go ahead and flatten this and save it, and flatten this one and save it. Okay, so this looks pretty good. I mean, it's very subtle, but it's definitely more impactful than it was before. So I'm going to show you my advanced edits actions, which is actually color toning. Now you could do this with just this action set if you wanted, as opposed to doing it yourself, but it's always nice to know how to do it yourself if need be. So let's say, again, I wanted cool highlights in her face, but let's say I wanted it to be more cyan. You can click this and you can see that it really brightened that up substantially, but you can drop the opacity down to get to a place that's a little more reasonable, somewhere around there. And then if you wanted to do some warm shadows, you could just click warm shadows and then reduce that down to a more reasonable level as well. So it's just up to you if you want to do it yourself or if you want actions to do it for you. Now in this action set, there are some interesting ones like purple and beige toning. This is a really cool one. And then again, you can reduce this down to whatever works for you. I do like that. I feel like that has taken some of those yellows away. So I actually like the purple beige toning for this image. I'm going to drag this one over here as well so that they match. And that's why I do it, because I want my images to look exactly the same. When people buy these, if they buy 2 of them, they're going to want them to look exactly the same as far as color and everything else. You're not going to want them to look any differently. Okay, so that really in a nutshell is color toning. I'm going to go ahead and flatten this and save it, and flatten this and save it. You can do this multiple times. So now we can see, we can look, if I go back into Selective Color, we can see that our shadows at this point are probably leaning more towards this, which is more of a magenta, right? So if you wanted to come in and tweak it, you could add, let's say, a +6 and then get some matte in there, which is always nice. So we've matted it up a bit right about here. Come back into our neutrals. Let's add a little bit of yellow back to our subject, and again a little bit of red back to our subject. Again, you can do this multiple times to tweak and tweak until you get something that you really like, and then adjust your opacity to suit. So something like that. And I'm going to drag this one over here as well. There. So any other questions, feel free to post them below, let me know. And if you're interested in purchasing this action set, I will link it below in the description as well. And until the next video, you guys have a good one.